Trails meeting. Now we're going. All right, so yeah, well, welcome to the September Parks and Trails meeting. We'll start off with roll call and then we'll jump into minutes. So Jean Souvigny. Tim Stevens.
I'm here.
Sarah Stans.
Present.
We have Clay, Bolt, Sarah Hubbard, and Bob Ballard. Not in attendance, so that's it for us. I didn't see any minutes for June attached.
I didn't even.
Does he have them?
We can pass. Do it next time.
I guess we all have a meeting. Yeah. So we are going to get those minutes for the next meeting. I sent those to, I think we sent the recording to the city. Hello. I think we sent Emily the recording, because I don't think anybody from the city was here in June.
We were not, no, I was at farmer's market.
You get a free cookie for sitting there.
Like that. You guys want cookies?
They're really good. They're peanut butter ginger.
All right, so with that, we'll move minutes to the next meeting. We'll jump into the first item on the new business, which would be Wishberry Hollow updates. This was a lot more timely in August when we were going to discuss it, but essentially just wanted to give like a recap of Wishberry Hollow since that wrapped in like early August. I never attended personally, but my kids went a few times. Heard it was great. Megan didn't have any, I think everything went smoothly from the setup perspective. Good feedback from everybody I talked to from the community about it. We had did you go to the bike fairy tales?
Bike ride, it was face painting.
Oh.
If I could, if you ever want a crowd of children to arrive, face painting is a hook, line, and sinker.
Wonderful.
Bike decorations, and so, yeah, we're probably about 15 kiddos,
Oh, how fun.
very cute.
Is there any way of guesstimating how many people came?
No, I was actually curious if like Megan would have any guesses at that. She was probably out there more, but I don't know that we have a great way to count.
There was
But-
no counter.
No counters placed, but I would imagine it was lots because I know my kids went twice at least.
I went twice and it was fun. Lots of mosquitoes this year.
Mm.
Incredible amount of mosquitoes. They had spray that you could use right as you walked in. So
They must have looked really big in the fairy houses. Like pet
Mosquitoes.
birds.
That's fucking pterodactyl.
always looking at the good side, Tim.
Maybe they are fairies.
Ah, see.
But it was good. It was nice.
Yeah, so
Who does that? Is it like a,
Wishberry?
yeah,
Yeah, so Megan
Megan?
Eubank sort of leads the effort. She's kind of the primary planner of it all, and then she kind of just works with, like Sarah and I were kind of just helping her with from the Parks and Trails side this year, and then she works with Maggie on like Parks and Recreation stuff too.
and who does the,
And then she recruits all the artists and gets the installation set up and runs the
Grants.
whole, applies for some grants to fund like paying the artists.
and they get
small
paid,
stipend,
right?
Like a very small amount to cover
Just a
materials.
stipend.
Yeah, it's like maybe $100 or something just to cover that.
Oh, that's
stuff
nice though.
they
Yeah.
make it with. So really neat. It's like, this is the third year, second. I can't. But it's
Third.
just, it's a really neat event and I just love seeing it happen. It's a great way to bring people out to parks. Especially like, just like having something for kids in that park is really fun because otherwise, it's just pretty much only see old people walking dogs or things like that, dog walking. That's great. Yeah. So that's Wishberry Hollow. Excited to bring it back next year, since I won't be on the committee next year. To figure out who, or just Sarah will run it in conjunction with like you, Tim.
Yeah,
But yeah, good stuff. I love that event.
She doesn't need our help.
Not really. It's like, it's nice though to like
We support.
have the PTC support. It's like last year I wrote a letter of support for the grant.
Yeah.
Helped, yeah, in that effort. Yeah, it runs itself. All right, so then, I guess any public comment? Great. Cool, PTC adoption of Bozeman Connector Trail would be the next one. We had discussed doing this, at our June meeting, I believe. Having the committee adopt a trail. Since, you know, we are actively looking to increase participation in the Adopt a Trail program. We thought it'd be good to put our money where our mouth is. And adopt a trail. And Bozeman Connector was the one that we all landed on. And we didn't take a vote on it, but wanted to re-bring it up here and see if there's anything that we wanted to do about like, you know, putting something in place to do a cleanup or something.
My comment is that we should wait for the whole committee.
Yeah.
To be part of that, since it'll take a group effort. On what we want to do there.
I will say, I'd love to do it. We walk it all the time and it's usually, people usually are pretty respectful unless you want to start picking up dog poop, which I think is disgusting to pick up other people's dog poop. We know what I started doing on the trail is pulling the spotted knapweed. And so if we could do like, a spotted knapweed pull as we go along. Spotted knapweed's worse than trash.
Agreed.
We can talk about that in 2 agenda items, with education. Trail participants. But, all right, we can put that down for next meeting to talk about.
I think so. And there's some really cool stuff having with pull weed, plant a seed and seed bombs,
On seatbelt.
making seed bombs and then bombing trails,
I love that.
which is gonna start to happen. And so I think we can incorporate that too. You're disturbing soil.
Bears back there, they hit there's a elderberry. The big giant elderberry bushes, and they come on and raid the elderberry bushes. When there's a couple piles of elderberry seed laden bear poop out there, so just don't go out there in the middle of the night, you know, picking trash up.
Our friends have the house right below Mars Park, where there's like the creek kind of turns through. And they sent us a video of a very large bear in their yard.
Really?
Couple mornings in a row, they found bear poop, and then they actually saw the bear that day, like one of the mornings, and it was a very, very, very healthy looking.
I just think they're on a circuit. They only come through and hit the berries when they're ripe and then they leave and they don't hang out there, but
I would assume not like a couple
uh,
years ago. Yeah, definitely bear activity out there this fall. All right, so we'll put that for next meeting to try to set a cleanup time. I don't know if we'll get that done 2023 or not. With the weather turning, but we can discuss. All right. Or I guess any comment on that one? All right, so then open seats for 2024. We have 3 folks terming off. Gene, myself, and Clay. None of us are going to be reapplying, so we'll have 3 open seats for the upcoming year, 2024. Traditionally, we've done applications in like the October range, and then we would review them. We had a meeting to make our recommendation, or like formalize our recommendation to the commission that send that along for their approval in December in time so that they could be seen and be fully approved for our December meeting or January meetings. So working backwards from that timeline, I think we would need to have applications open sometime in October. Is that right, Grant?
Which is in 3 days.
Which is in 3 days.
Because you have to have 30 days.
Because we have to, yeah, it has a 30-day window to apply.
Do we need to do anything? Can we recirculate some? Yeah,
Yeah, we've got like posting.
They do it on.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Are there people who put in for last time that didn't get it, who we could urge to reapply, or?
we've had quite a few applicants the last couple of
It's only on hand for 6 months. So the last application period would have been last November, December. So unless that's changed by the city, they'd have to reapply. I think.
We have everybody's information though, and happy to.
Good contact you.
So,
Yeah, and typically, I guess, I don't know if this changes at all, but like, we would do like 30-minute interviews with like 2 people from the committee.
mhm.
Yeah,
And make a
And make
recommendation.
a recommendation. And that, is that process still? Well.
If that's what the Parks and Trails Committee wants, that's what.
Okay.
They approached all the committees a while ago asking if we wanted to make recommendations or the city commission, and we said we would do it to save time.
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay,
And then would
so,
it be, is it, people that are staying on the committee? We do those interviews. We've done it in the past and the other way around, but now. I know we're not a county commission, but I feel Berg stepping down can't be involved in the next recruitment of the county commissioner. I know we're not that level, but
my gut says it'd be nice for everybody who's staying to, or like, for the people who are staying to be involved. So, currently, of the 4 people here,
it's Tim and I.
it's you and Tim.
Is Quentin gonna continue on?
That's decided in January. I think.
Yeah, I think they retool that every year.
Okay.
Not that Quentin has been.
I would offer some of that about your question will probably get answered in item G.
All right, so then in that case. So you're actually the 2 oldest. You know, like most tenured members, I guess. of
Really?
the-
Wow.
Oh,
Of the commission.
Because
committee.
Clay's stepping down and Sarah and Bob are new.
Sarah and Bob, this is their first year. So. I think it would actually make sense for the 2 of you to run
okay.
Do the
the
interviews.
interviews.
Yeah.
If that's
Yeah,
acceptable.
yeah, I think that's acceptable. I think if we get more than like 5 or 6, which I don't anticipate, then maybe we could divvy it up some other way.
Yeah, I think the max we
Yeah,
had.
unless we had like 50, but if it's more like 4, then yeah.
But you have 3 seats to fill.
Yeah, so you have to have at least 3 interviews.
Yeah,
Right,
I think the last time around, we had like 5
Yeah.
applications.
it's pretty good.
right.
Yeah.
So I expect it would land somewhere in there. Yes, unless civic engagement has increased dramatically. Without people attending.
They don't wanna come unless they're on the committee. That's
It's
power.
true.
Cool, great.
All right, so
So do we have to do anything to get something in advertised?
I can handle it with the city clerk.
And does that get sent out as like a part of the city newsletter or anything like that? I
I'm
was
happy
thinking
to
we could
include
do
it,
that.
I'm happy to include it in the newsletter. Yeah, in the past, I think they've just put it on Facebook and on the website, and it's kind of be through just word of mouth.
Yeah,
But
and
I'm
we-
happy to publicize it.
and we can circulate it on our Facebook page too.
So we should maybe have you guys done much in the way of like having a hit list and trying to recruit people, or you just sort of open it up?
We've done that too. Well, it's open, it has to be open.
It's open, but we've definitely like asked people, you know, that we thought would be interested to apply.
Spread the word.
George Worthner.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I don't think he lives in town anymore.
It doesn't.
Okay, Grant, do you know like any idea of when that would be, applications would be open?
I don't off the top of my head, but I would imagine we can work through the process relatively quickly, given that we just went through it a year ago.
Probably just 30-day period.
Okay, cool. So like probably sometime by next week, we could have those going.
Quite possibly, yeah. Quite possibly.
Alright. And then we'll have our October meeting, and typically we hold like one meeting in between November and December.
Because of
Because
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving and Christmas will fall the same. About when our meetings are, so. We'll probably end up doing like an early December meeting or something like that to approve these and do a final. 2023 meeting.
Okay.
So, historically, like Allison and I did one of these. And I think we just interviewed everybody in like one shot after that window closed. But you guys can choose to interview as they come in or whatever.
I prefer to do it in one shot.
One shot, and usually we'll get, what I remember is we just got all the applications at once
A lot of them.
from the city. Like it didn't, they weren't sent to us, trickled in, they were like sent and here are the applications.
Last year, Faith just like,
Oh,
as they came in with. send them. Maybe Emily would do it.
So Emily will send them to you, I think, right?
Typically, yeah, last year I got them all.
Yeah.
As they came in and forward them along to the interviewers, which I think was Shannon. Or Shannon, Allison. So.
Okay.
Good.
Cool. Any other comments on open seats? Yeah. Cool, so the next one is, next item would be weed education for adopted trail participants. I can't remember who brought that up, whose agenda item this was, if that's Clay or you, but.
It can be either, but I don't know the details of what that is. But I know, so I can probably add libs and.
I would love to see it. You know, just like I said, from the trail that we're hopefully gonna adopt. I mean, there's a lot of spotted knapweed and I was started going down to, bring the dogs down when I go run in the morning at 9th Street, down, you know, 9th Street Bridge there. And was a huge bunch of spotted knapweed. And I, while the dog was running around, I just like pulled a couple of plants and I kind of left them on the side there. And then I came back a week later and there was this huge pile of spotted knapweed that people had pulled. They sort of like followed which is good if you get it at the roots, and then if you don't get it while it's proceeding. But there's definitely some things that, and I think people are willing, but we all need to know how to do it right. So maybe there's like a little card or something that we can include for the adopt trail people, or just in general, like, hey, why not encourage just people who are strolling along, like, see this plant, you should pull it, and here's how. Like to have like a little educational sign or a little, pamphlets people can pick up along the way and be a good thing.
But we had talked to Eric Schneider a couple of years ago, he's the former parks foreman, about training for the adopted trail group, and they were interested in that at the time. So, but we never got the training established. The other trail that really needs it is Myers Riverview Trail. Really needs. So there's a couple of trails, and what we talked about when Allison was on the committee, and I think we talked about it with Clay, is having a training at one of those sites. But we have to figure out, we actually talked about doing it on June, is it National Trails Day in June?
Yes.
Because there's certain times of the year that are better for picking the weeds than others.
Identifying.
And so I think they had decided when we talked to, is it Leah, that's the weed coordinator?
Well, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so she had said, June would be a good time to come and do the training and pick the weeds, and you have to be careful what you do with the weeds as soon as you pick them.
Yeah.
So that was what we talked about for National Trails Day, is doing a weed cleanup, but you have to have the training before then, so people are ready.
You can't do the training and do the,
You could, I suppose. You could do it all in one day, probably.
it'd be a great thing to do. I mean, open it up to the community. I mean, not just the adopted trails people, but
Right.
people would really, I think, be pretty well received.
In our adopted trail, like agreement, we have it as a little
Possibly.
item, just to be educated about weeds and pulling weeds and.
Yeah, if we do something like that, I think we need to like actually. Put something together that's easy to do each year, each group,
Yeah.
Because the last thing I would want is for like. Clay to be the guy who leads that, or you, and then they get off the committee and the next person doesn't know what to do.
I think a
So,
little video.
yeah, like something that's as short as like a couple page. PDF document or a short video of like what it is, what to look for, how to pull it,
Well, I'm sure that
Resources.
those are already available.
Yeah.
And so we probably don't really have to reinvent the wheel, especially with all the focus on weeds.
Yeah.
So I mean, probably the, the extension has something, or maybe county has something already that we can poach from. And we could do an in-person thing, but we could also just, try and get the word out.
Totally, yeah.
So-
I get
So
it.
maybe we could reapproach the city and see if they'd be still interested in having us do this.
And then, Park County Environmental Council has a weed monitoring specialist. And this is her foray. But she's been doing seed bombs and we're doing clay.
You think she'd be willing to organize it?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And then
Yeah.
she's staffed to do that. So it would be,
That is literally what she's paid to do.
and she works with the extension and
It's like a good fit.
I think weeds be,
Okay,
should be a good one.
so as like a takeaway for this one,
I'll reach out.
do we want to like begin crafting some level of like, for, like weed education piece that we could provide to the Dr. Trail people, and then like talk about a day that we could put a live training in? for next year?
What if we were to invite your person to be a guest at the next meeting? And then maybe the point person with the city to be a guest, and we can just have a dialogue and have a little bit of brainstorming of what we might want to do and what resources are already available. So we're not, we're tapping something instead of having to do it ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then based on their, sort of expertise and input, then to sort of decide on a direction.
Does that work, Grant? Or what do you think the process needs to be? We're talking about city trails and parks. So
Yeah, I hate to say like, gosh, let's just talk about this under item G, but. I certainly agree that probably some education, or at least the city putting out some of the work that's already been done by other agencies and entities about weed control probably would go a long way. I'm happy to have Mike or somebody from the Parks Department at the next meeting. If you guys would think.
I'd still have you invite your coworker to the next
Great.
one, see if we can get Mike.
I will, and Clay is a good resource for that too. Okay.
I thought he was just a bee guy. I thought he had a real narrow focus.
don't you say that.
Just the-
Tip of the spear.
Yeah.
You clearly are not on his Facebook page.
No.
All right, any other comments on the weed education? Cool, well, B City updates will be the next one. Our resident bee/weed/ just all around jack of all trades here. He's not, Clay is not here to present this, but he did send me quite a large email with updates to share, and it looks like everyone else was on it, but just for the sake of sharing this, Clay's been meeting with Bethany Allen for PCEC, and Jackie Pondolfino from the MSU Extension. And they're leading the native plant garden development at the library. So he's kind of hoping that the library's garden can be kind of a teaching garden for Bee City, and a place to educate the community about what the native bee population and native plant impacts are. In addition to that, at a September farmers market, he was there doing the seed bomb building activity. And was promoting the Bee City program. Then future plans include an enterprise article in the springtime. He was thinking in April to coincide with No Mow May and Bee City to sort of dovetail all of that energy together. And then he said if there's a new city event related to the Bee City status, kind of like use it to kick off a native plant sale for the PCC Freshwater Partners sale every year that happens in the spring. They've been discussing boulevards for bees here in Livingston, don't know what that entails precisely, but it would be, winter, springtime, program to essentially kind of take Novo May and move it to a new season with different work to create habitat for bees. And then kind of in the ideation phase of a pollinator trail at Myers River. It'd be kind of cool. And then there's also a native plant list for the city he's developed. Which is a requirement for Bee City, but yeah, that's done and is being improved on as he goes, so. A lot of Bee City activity.
That's great.
That's awesome.
So the real tie though with Parks and Trails is going to be the Nomo May and the potential pollinator trail at Myers.
Yes, we are also though, like. The overseers, I guess, of Bee City, the programming as Parks and Trails, right?
The committee.
Committee, or like the Bee City board.
Contact.
Yeah, like I'm the chair of Bee City board, because I'm the chair here. So I don't know exactly know how that.
What's Clay's role? How's it gonna shift? If Clay,
It's off.
yeah, who's off the committees. How does that, how does that structure work with? public
That's why I was
and private?
asking about the tie to Parks and Trails.
Is that gonna be an item G?
Yeah, I'd say that's G.
Dang,
Okay.
can we just skip to D?
Hey, if, no, because I think F is probably not G.
Okay.
Alright,
That's good.
I will say I work for Freshwater Partners and we could work with you guys on event and timing for that sale if there was any kind of coordination that could happen with the city.
sweet. Yeah, I think that's something definitely would love to do. I think all of that plays together, so. It looks like, and Clay's already been thinking about it in that way, so.
Yeah.
Would be able on that. And we'll all be on the same page. All right, any final comments on the Bee City updates? Great. Cool, so then we just want to have something that Sarah raised in an email, we had a chance to chat about as well, was the next item, discussion about beaver activity around parks. So Sarah, if you don't care, if you don't mind, I'll let you.
Yeah,
Kind of
sure.
what you've been hearing from the community and what we talked about.
I think this really comes from just, I don't remember beavers being in and around Livingston growing up. And so from my observation, anecdotal experience, there is an increase in beavers around the Flushman Creek area. And then, up from Myers all the way up, Myers Landing, all the way up through to where it meets the river. And I mean, I've seen them in the lagoon, I think I saw Lagoon 2018, and I was really surprised and impressed. And we get a lot of calls through our nonprofit, and I think Leah, Montana Freshwater Partners, and they're really the beaver experts, like kind of working on this. And so there's a lot of activity from the public and a lot of uncertainty around what is the beaver management policy and practices and what people do, and confusions and myths. And there's a lot of energy that's put into responding to the public. And so my question, I sent out an email just to Connor and Grant of just, do we have a policy? Is there a management plan? And what are the practices? And then my question here really is, what is the Parks and Trails Committee role in something like this? And then, because there's the nonprofit side of it, and then just reaching out to the Montana Beaver Coalition, which Leah and Montana Freshwater Partners are part of. And there's an amazing amount of activity and resources and strategy to put towards this. And so I printed off just a couple of their resources and some of the stuff that Leah's put together just on tree protections and pond levelers. And then Jean had some history around what some of the restoration up in Fleshman Creek that could be really useful in a report that's happened there. And so it seems like there's a lot of resources, information and background. And then, I mean, we will probably get public comment on the activity there, and like, we could lean into a lot of that, and maybe there's no role for us at all, except for how does it interact with parks and trails, right? But that's where it's in our domain as this committee. So it really is just a discussion, no decision, or just to bring it to the table and out of the emails and out of the public concern, and how do we respond even?
Well, this has come up before with respect to Mayor's Landing. Because when we did that restoration in 2002 or 3 or whatever, beavers were an issue there. Because they would dam just before it hit the river and flood that area by the tree. And the local Trout Unlimited had indicated at the time that they might be willing to keep breaking down the beaver dams so it wouldn't flood. That really hasn't happened, but Bill Campbell subsequently hired someone, I can't remember if you have that report, from a biologist.
Amy Chadwick.
Yeah,
I saw
Amy
that.
Chadwick did the report about how to manage beaver populations, and maybe you could put some pipes underneath where they build the dams, for example, so the water can still flow through to the river. So that was done, and then, because we're trying to look for a solution at Mayor's Landing as well, where some of the beaver dam building really creates a little bit of flooding there. Or a lot of flooding,
Yeah, that and the, you know, big cottonwoods that they, you know,
chopped down.
try to take down, or at least, or actually take down is, I think, is probably another visible sign. And, you know, I don't know if what happens when they start on, like, if the city comes up and, you know, puts one of those gates around it or not, so. I think it's important, and it's direct correlation with, you know, trails, but, you know, what our role is, I'm unclear.
So I'm happy to share with the city, you know, kind of our current, we don't have a formal, you know, written management plan. But I guess the agreement that was arrived at, and I'm guessing it was part of this work back in the early 2000s, was that the city does not do anything at the mouth of Fleshman Creek in the Mayor's Landing area. Kind of let the beavers have free reign. However, when it comes to Sacagawea Park and the lagoon, we do operate a bit differently. When we have beavers that are building a dam, you know, in the area leading up to the lagoon, or I guess the west end of the lagoon after the head gates, really. We do work to relocate those beavers. We do that for a few reasons. First and foremost, usually when they're doing that, they're also working on trees, and we don't really want to have a tree in a compromised position in Sacagawea Park. And then also the guidance that we got from the insurance company was basically because of all of the land we own there, and because of you know, a few other just intricacies that exist at Sacagawea and not down at Mayor's Landing and on Fleshman Creek farther down. We do actually, like I said, trap and remove those beavers. We have not been apparently following the proper paperwork trail with Fish, Wildlife and Parks, so I'm working on rectifying that with the team, so that we do the right thing. But basically, the insurance company has told us that they are tired of paying claims for flooded basements or flooded houses, and so they're not going to do that anymore in the Sacagawea area. And this isn't a new decision; this is one that was made, you know, over a decade ago. And so that really, between the beaver's ability to more or less drain the lagoon and the city's financial liability from, you know, related activities, and also the safety concern related to trees in the park. For that reason, we do relocate them in the Sacagawea Park area.
Well, that makes sense, and then, but then sort of, so. But outside of Sacagawea Park, there's a little bit more grace, or is there a hands-off approach?
We don't touch them. yeah, we let them go pretty much below the pool if they come out. Yep. And
Have
that
there
again,
been-
it's. we
Have there
just-
been flooded basements around Sacagawea from the beavers?
Yeah, a couple of houses, just right where McGee reaches river, right there. They're pretty low relative to the water level and, so I think we've had 3 separate houses have had, I want to say there was like 6 claims in like a 10-year period.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, MMIA said, hey, you guys gotta actually manage the beaver thing prior to paying, so.
Hmm.
um, Yeah, and there's just a few houses there that have like walkout basements really that are most at risk. But the tree thing really, actually is kind of our larger concern.
And they went after a lot this last year.
Yeah, that was, and so we actually just, within the last like 6 weeks, we relocated a 44 and a 48-inch beaver, which I mean, that's a pretty good size. 2 pretty good size ones, one out of the park there, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I ask where they were relocated to?
Yes, we took them up the Shields Valley. We've got an employee who used to do animal control professionally and still kind of enjoys it as a hobby. So he honestly just volunteers to go out at like 2 a.m. on Saturday and hunt beavers. Yeah. So it's-
Grant's freezer. That's How do they lure them in the trap? Do they put like a little hard hat and a little saw into the trap and then like?
I'm happy to bring the staff member to the next meeting. And I actually was shocked that he's out there at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday and then in there at 8 a.m. on Monday, just like it never happened. So, yeah.
So, but so that answers your question about Sacagawea, but like outside of Sacagawea is that like. I mean, I like to leave them alone unless it just becomes untenable. So does having that as a written policy. Make more trouble than it's worth?
Interesting. I personally have talked to several homeowners along Fleshman Creek, between the pool and Mayor's Landing. And some of, I guess, the ones with more frontage. In my conversations with them, they seem to enjoy it. For various reasons. Everybody's kind of different. Some people just, like the fact that there's beavers there. Some people like the physical separation it provides them from the Girl Scouts property and the people who use the Girl Scouts property that would otherwise come onto their property. And some people honestly hate it and want them out of there. And so, yeah, I would say more people enjoy the beavers for various reasons than don't enjoy the beavers. That's kind of my rough poll from people on the street. But we could certainly look at a management plan if we thought that was an avenue we want to go down.
Maybe more like educational campaigns or, I don't know, what resources we can utilize, and then I wonder. Noticing dead beavers and traps and things down by that Mayor's Landing area. What are the repercussions for?
You've seen traps down there?
I thought I saw like, like you get that classic, like 2 poles in the water. And then under the water will be an underwater trap. And I don't know. I didn't like go and investigate. But just from doing the trap training for your dogs, that's like one of the signs to look out for. And that was a couple of years ago. And that was down closer to the northeast side, I guess, downstream of the Yellowstone River.
I would think it would be the Girl Scouts that would be most directly affected, and I've never heard a complaint from them. Right? I mean, if they're building the dam where they usually.
Yeah. Or we've seen dead beavers down there that have been
Oh.
terminated. My dog found it and rolled in it.
I've had several conversations with the Girl Scouts in my 11 months here as city manager. They've never mentioned the beavers once. That does not seem to be a concern of
Right.
theirs. It's more the people actually on the north side of Fleshman Creek that seem either love it or hate it.
Sure.
Yeah, I can just share a little bit. like Sarah said, we've been involved in the Montana Beaver Working Group. And it's just a large group of lots of different folks from around the state who've been working on like a beaver action plan for the state, kind of recognizing that beavers are really great at storing water during droughts and creating good habitat for wildlife and attenuating floods and all those types of things. And one piece of that program is a conflict mitigation arm. So we've been working on getting we're gonna have a beaver conflict specialist who's based out of for Region 3, which includes Livingston and also like Bozeman and the Madison Valley, to kind of be available as a resource when landowners are having conflicts with beavers as kind of like an alternative to the lethal removal, since a lot of times beavers are quick to move back in and it's like really expensive for landowners to keep doing those types of things. So yeah, just wanting to share that those resources are out there, and there's currently someone in Region 2 out in Missoula who is available for calls, and I think would be really happy to like think through Fleshman Creek a little bit, because it is complicated in an urban environment to have beavers, but they're doing really great things in some areas, so maybe there's some like a compromise or something. But yeah, we're happy to kind of be involved.
Well, it's great to know that there's gonna be a resource person here too, you can refer
Yeah.
people to.
Totally, yeah.
Huh.
And then I guess the other part, is that I think, yeah, like you said, talking to FWP is important just because relocating beavers is technically not allowed, I think, so. Trying to work with them. Claire Gower out of Bozeman is like the person to talk to.
Yes, we recognize that we weren't maybe following all the protocols, but not the only area that I've noticed that in.
I wanna see a 48-inch beaver as well.
Yeah.
You and me
I love
both,
you noticed
actually.
that.
Yeah, I really-
That's big.
That's a sizable creature.
A Great Dane, the Great Dane of beavers.
Like baby alligator, man.
So sort of, I'm guessing that the protocol, we already have at the end of the funnel, which is kind of like you and the specialist, and I mean, we get calls, or PCC gets calls, I'd like funnel people to them because they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, totally. We're happy to kind of like help respond to calls. And then I sent Sarah Alyssa, who's the beaver conflict specialist out of Missoula, put these handouts together, so. Some guidance around like a tree fencing and pond levelers, if the city decides to go that route.
I'll be honest,
Yeah,
I don't imagine that we would be trying to jump into an active management situation to
yeah,
the extent possible.
totally.
I've not gotten any complaints from homeowners about them. It was, I was talking to homeowners for other reasons, and so it was like, oh, you got the beaver thing happening here, and
Yeah,
I feel like it was 90% in favor of it.
yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Grant, I'll send you that report, Bill Campbell
That'd be great.
commission, just because he presented it to the committee at one point. So it's very good.
I have noticed they've been marching into town more, like there's dams between Sacagawea and Mayor's Landing. Little
Yeah.
test dams, so it might become a bigger issue.
Well, they're definitely affecting the flow where Fleshman Creek first comes down, which is too bad, because we would like that to keep flowing, not get backed up like it is
I mean, like, right below.
before the lagoon, really,
Oh,
where it comes down.
And that really is the area upstream of the lagoon that we
Right.
focus our efforts
Right.
on, because it's problematic for a number of reasons.
Yeah, and they hit a number of trees there and right along the river in that little dry area.
When's the city gonna dredge the lagoon? Maybe let them block it.
Not a bad idea, actually.
Relocate, yeah.
I do think we have to have DEQ in to inspect the lagoon next summer, if I'm not mistaken, so I think that will be the next opportunity for us to do something with it.
And then, yeah, some folks have just, some members of the public have been talking about being volunteers to go wrap trees. With appropriate fencing, so if there's ever landowners that are worried about trees, or the city even, I don't know, and I'm sure the city has it in control or whatever, but there was some public expressing if they need any labor or hands or anything to install blow levelers or rat trees or whatever, that they take that on. Yeah, or participate.
We've got bodies
All right.
if you need them.
Yeah, well, it sounds like I should reach out to Region 3 and kind of find out what they recommend as their best practice for urban waterways.
Yeah, and they're involved in the working group too, so, we work with FWP directly, and I think Claire would reference you back to Alyssa, who's the conflict person in Missoula,
Oh, okay,
For the time being.
for now until next year, and hopefully we have someone there.
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Now the big agenda item.
Finally achieved.
Yeah, I know, we really
Yeah.
hyped this thing up, didn't we?
Yeah, we have arrived.
So, this item is, kind of stems from a conversation that happened at the city commission. A few weeks ago, and, I guess even 11 months ago, when the city commission hired me and, tasked me with several things, and, one of those was really just to kind of look at the different efficiency of certain city operations. And so, as you know, I've attended most of these meetings, and I've also attended most of the tree board and pretty much every board meeting that the city of Livingston's held in the last 11 months, missed a few. And so, I guess basically we have two, maybe three types of boards. We've got the statutory boards like zoning, planning, and URA. Historic preservation also fits into that, there is some power and necessity dictated by the state for those boards. We have programmatic boards like Sister City, that exist really just for one reason, kind of because we have to have them. And your reference really to the B board, that we made the decision to put Parks and Trails in charge of Bee City USA. Because the passion for bees was here. And then we've got the other advisory boards, which include this board, tree board, and conservation board. This board and tree board, actually, when one goes back into the annals of history, were set up as advisory boards to the city commission. And this board specifically was set up as an advisory board to the city commission to advise on the Parks and Trails Master Plan a number of years ago. And really to, just kind of help the city commission work through that process. So it is a setup as a legislative advisory board. And so one of, I guess, the observations that I have had is that while it is a legislative advisory board, if we just look through this agenda, really, there's few, if any, items that Parks and Trails is currently looking at that are, legislative advisory in nature. We're actually here dealing more with kind of executive advisory type roles, right? And trying to kind of influence city operations rather than city policy. And I think the last couple of conversations and the next couple of items are fairly indicative of that. And so there is a little bit of a conflict between how the board was set up and how it's currently operating. Layer on top of that probably, I think I've only seen city staff at these meetings maybe twice in the 11 months that I've been here. I think I can think of one time Dan Baker came and one time Mike Skaggs came. It is functionally a little bit difficult for us to get hourly duty staff out, away from their families. And then also, thirdly, when we went back and reviewed the tape of all of the advisory boards, kind of the unfortunate reality is while we have a dedicated group of volunteers on the boards, that are willing to give up 2 hours, or 3 hours, whatever it is, a month for this work. We don't often actually get any members of the public into these meetings, right? And so, if I look at that, it sure shapes up to be a situation that could use maybe a little bit of thinking. And maybe a little bit of analysis to see if how things are structured and how things are operating is optimal. Or if there are tweaks that can be made that, increase public participation, increase kind of the working nature of members of the community and staff, and, really with the goal, I guess, of kind of increasing community input, interaction, and involvement with how we operate the parks and how we structure them and trails, right? And so, I can sit here and, think of several different ways that we could have boards like this function, advisory boards like this function, right? And for parks and trails, probably a very obvious way might be to have open houses, for the community a couple of times a year, right? If parks are a little bit seasonal in nature, it might make sense to do something in the spring, kind of as we're preparing the parks and getting ready for park season, summer season, to talk about, what people would like to see, different projects upcoming. And then maybe similarly, it might make sense to hold something in the fall, that is kind of a wrap up to the park season, right? What worked, what didn't work, what would people like to see next year? And that would give our team kind of the opportunity over the winter to formulate some plans, and prepare things for the budget that starts in July. That is just one way that I can envision this board, and I could say the same about tree board, acting a little bit differently. And so, the commission several meetings ago tasked me with looking at how all of the boards operate and coming back to them with some recommendations on some possible tweaks. And so, that was really kind of the intent of this conversation, was really to find out, is this working for you folks, in a way that you enjoy? Are there, changes to how you operate that you could envision that you would like to see? So kind of a wide-ranging topic. And I guess I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions or any comments, I'm happy to hear them.
Well, I'm happy to, as having been on the committee for almost 8 years. I actually enjoyed it 2 or 3 years ago more than the last couple of years. And part of it was the change in how we were doing things, and we weren't doing things correctly. Because what we were doing was responding in large part to comments we heard from the public. Or to Public Works. And Public Works often referred people to the committee to talk to us, whether it was people from Green Acres or the American Legion fields. The city manager asked us to look at the flagpole issue, and American Legion came in. We had a whole number of issues like that were referred to us, and so we noticed them and people came in. And then we fed those recommendations back to the staff, and then we're told we're not supposed to be talking to the staff. So I think it left a lot of confusion about whether we're supposed to, what we're supposed to do when people are referred to us to talk to us about an issue. Does it now go directly to staff and there's no role for us? It does twice a year public meetings mean that people throughout the year don't have an opportunity for an individual discussion about, for example, what people in Green Acres want for their park, what their priorities were. Is there a role that we can help facilitate those recommendations going to either directly to the city commission, which almost seems like a little bit more of a waste of time to go directly to them with that stuff, rather than staff, they could go directly to you. But it was actually encouraging to feel like people were coming to us with issues like American Legion. Russ Smith came and spoke to us at Shannon's recommendation, and his concern was pretty simple, and we just sent a recommendation saying, you know, they're concerned about dogs and they're concerned about vandalism. Can they control the park right before a tournament and things like that? It's nice to feel like we can provide some input that is useful without that weighing down necessarily city staff in going through all that. So that doesn't necessarily fit with the twice a year public meeting is the problem. So,
Yeah, and very, very fair points. You know, it seems my observation in the last, you know, it's only less than a year. You know, just in the last month, if I think, you know, somebody approached me about flags at the Triangle in Sacagawea Park, right? And said, hey, there used to be a flagpole here. And we're working through that process. Just my comment to them was, well, there's a war memorial about 100 yards, you know, north of that old flagpole. Perhaps we could consolidate both
which is
memorials.
what our recommendation was.
Which, and I'll say that person said, yeah, that's a great idea, Grant. Glad you guys are on that thing. And so we're talking internally about that. I had another person from our high class of 79 who approached our Parks Department and said, hey, we'd love to do a memorial bench for class of 79. You know, let's talk about that. And so we're having a little bit of a conversation on that memorial bench. So I guess, you know, my observation is that a lot of members of the public approach me or approach the Public Works Department with like parks related ideas.
Right.
So yeah, it's, I guess, weighing that really. But I welcome any other thoughts. I mean, do you folks find this time useful? Do you find it enjoyable? Is it, you know, I guess, what would you do different if you were city manager for a day?
You know, and this maybe is just me, but, I'm not used to being one step removed from the decision maker. And to be dependent upon somebody else, to make decisions. And I know this is advisory, so I get that. But I think, you know, one of the things I think I've figured with this committee, as long as we're, you know, we've got a list of items that we check in on a fairly regular basis. And as long as we're making some progress there, I think is what I want to see. But I mean, one thing I think about is, you know, the whole like, you know, logo design thing and the signs, that I feel like, you know, this committee did a lot of work on that before my time. And yet that kind of got bottled up within the city's process of, you know, new logo designs and stuff. My response to that is, well, don't waste anyone's time. Like, you know, and so I think that there's things that I would love to see. I'd love to understand if there's a copacetic relationship, like, hey, you folks, your advisory, you have a certain set of, you know, set of things that you're working on. And we as a city commission, in response to your, you know, volunteering for this time, we promise to put a priority on doing what we can to help move this stuff forward. Either, you know, because, you know, we're not telling the city employees to do it, but it's sort of like, okay, if we're working on this stuff, what's a better sort of, not necessarily a chain of command, but like accountability structure, so that we can be assured that, you know, all the work that was done on logo design and all that isn't for naught. And at the same time, recognizing that city staff are pretty overloaded, right? And so maybe sometimes the clear word has to come back that, hey, you know, we talked to city staff, and this item over here that you guys have been working on is going to be on hold until August of next year, at which point we'll pick up the conversation. And then we can say, okay, we stop putting it on the check-in list, you know? And so I think that, you know, we all are busy, and so I just want to make sure that we're putting our time where it's the best mesh for where the city's at with being able to sort of deliver, because we're simply doing this, you know, and if we're just doing this, and then either the city commission or city employees are like, sorry, guys, we got enough going on. It'd be good to hear that as well. That's not a wrong answer, you know? So anyways, that's sort of my bit of feedback, and part of it is I'm a control freak, you know, but the other part is just want to make sure that what we're doing here is a match with city priorities, and we're not just spinning our wheels here, and it's just gonna go into some black box and we don't hear about it for a while. So,
No, and that really, thank you, Tim. I mean, that really is kind of the fundamental shortcoming, I think, that I see. Is that some of the things that are talked about here, you know, are maybe longer range, maybe, you know, like just looking at like Reservoir Park. I mean, we've chatted about that the last few months, and, you know, yeah, we've said we'll address that in the October, November time with this kind of community process. You know, Parks Master Plan, you know, we're finishing up the scope of work so we can get the RFP out and go through that procurement process. Yeah, and map printing, you know, maps are printed, they're in boxes in City Hall, and we're distributing them out as we can. Yeah, I think there's a lot of these things that are very important, but they're also a little bit long-lived, long lead item things, you know, and so I don't know, I guess, do you folks find just a monthly update helpful? Some of these meetings feel like they could be an email, I guess, instead of.
no, you know, I mean, you know, one thing I'll just sort of build on is that, and sorry, you described but it'd be good to get your thinking, and don't hear it now, but sort of like, what's the stack? Because, you know, I like the idea of soliciting public input. But my question is then to what end? And so because there's three pieces out there, right? There's us, there's, you know, and when I say the city, I mean the city commission and city employees, and then there's the public. And it seems like maybe a process would be, let's have a, you know, reach out to the public and say, gee whiz, what priorities do you have for Parks and Trails this year? And then find out from, you know, city employees, what are your priorities this year? And then to have sort of an iterative process where we're able to work with city or city staff to say, okay, we understand kind of where you're going. And now let's identify what our role is there as, you know, what can we do to help advance those priorities? And then we could have our plate set for us so that we can put together our own plan for what our year looks like, based on the priorities that have been identified through the public and then filtered through the city. And then we can say, hey, you know, 24 is prime for these 5 items. And, you know, we're gonna punt to 25 for, you know, these 4 items, you know? And so maybe it has to do with process. And then we can say ourselves, like, okay, these are hot topics. We do need to meet in February, or, hey, you know, we've got individuals working on the stuff, we can update each other, and we don't necessarily need to have a face-to-face meeting.
No, and that's, you know, I guess where you kind of were thinking is kind of where I'm thinking as well, that, you know, I guess in my experience, project-based teams and project-based groups are probably as effective as anything else, right? And so with the example of like Green Acres Park, figuring out what do people in Green Acres want, you know, it would seem to me that maybe a very effective way to do that would be to have a group of Green Acres residents and community members that, you know, are in that area, and we, you know, have a process for that. Just as, you know, for Reservoir Park, it would seem most appropriate to at least talk to, you know, those neighbors, and certainly other community members invited to, you know, the open house and kind of a community discussion session. But then maybe there are just project-based groups that move some of these initiatives forward, just as, you know, Parks Master Plan, right? Maybe there's a group there that we could call from the community. And so, you know, that's, you know, the twice yearly meetings was one option, you know, and you know, maybe project-based ad hoc groups that come together for a task and accomplish that task and then, you know, break apart. You know, maybe that's another approach that, and again, the city commission, you know, sets those priorities at a certain point and says, okay, you know, these are our 3 big parks priorities. City manager, go out and, you know, get ad hoc groups together for those and push those initiatives forward. And I would say, I mean, that is kind of the genesis of this board anyway, right? It was a citizen board that was brought together before the last Parks Master Plan, to advise on that Parks Master Plan, and then was made an advisory committee just to, move that master plan through implementation, right? And so, if that's how this board grew, I don't know. There's a lot of ways I think that the work could be organized and executed. And it just occurs to me that, this meeting will use up at least 8 hours of citizen volunteer time. But we had no members of the public here, opining or providing input on any of these. And quite honestly, I don't.
One.
Thank you. And so we, I don't know how valuable, everybody finds this, and I'll say it's not just this board. I mean, I'll know if there's, we're one shy of not being able to hold this meeting. We were in that same position last Thursday with tree board. And, we find ourselves kind of in that, like, oh, do we have a quorum? Which tells me that perhaps enthusiasm isn't right where it could be, right? Full membership of the board at meetings is not the routine thing, so.
I mean, so I've been on the board, I guess, I don't know if it was 2018 or 2019, and when I joined, there was a lot of activity. And I think I also joined at the time where we were launching O Street Connector, and so there was a big public event, and so we managed hosting a public event, and we did, probably incorrectly, we were operating more as advocates than we were as legislative policy advisors. And I think that is a result of, who shows up to these boards. You're looking for community citizens that are like super passionate and interested about a single issue or parks and trails. And so we are the public that should be showing up, in these meetings. And so I don't want to underestimate the value of the energy that, like, why people want to have a place to be engaging in connection with each other. I do think that you would lose that momentum, whatever momentum exists, by reducing the amount of meetings. But I do understand it's a lot of time, and especially on like staff time, there's a lot of administration and just, the meeting minutes, and, I look at meeting minutes sometimes and I know they're valuable, but it's a lot of energy, right? That's put into something that doesn't have the efficacy and the value add. And then I think that's where a lot of our questioning has been as a committee. And to kind of go back, it's like we started as this really infectious group that a lot of energy was put in, things were happening. And then to a place where we were really stonewalled, where, in that memo, I'm sure everybody's referred to the memo and you've heard it a million times, but it was no public, no vendors, no communication to staff, like we couldn't do anything, and you had no budget. I was like, well, then what do we do? And so we're kind of in that hangover of operating like that, I think, and trying to figure out, where do we fit? And then your transition as a city manager of trying to gauge, what is that value add? What is that efficacy? And how do we really provide, to Tim's point, an impact to make sure that, that communication is a little bit shorter, and that we're getting more directives from executive or commission, and so that what we're delivering on is responsive, kind of up the ladder. And it's not necessarily like what we're working on, but that we're adding that value is what's really important to me. And when Darrell was our city commissioner, she wasn't perfect, but she was there and she was passionate and she was engaged, and she talked about what was important at the city commission, to the city commission. And when we were talking about trail abandonments and, land swaps, and, we would go visit members of the public and walk their land and look at the land and decide to the commission, like, this is valuable, this is not valuable. And so I thought that had a lot of meaning into what we're doing. And so, yeah, we're still kind of figuring out, like, what does the city need from us? And I think we're open to that. I think this is the only time that I've experienced that we've been close, only had a quorum in meetings. So this feels a little bit unique. Usually, we've never had that issue before, people showing up and, I mean, we pack a room if you talk about a flagpole.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You know, I think
Reservoir Park and flagpole.
one learning here is that it's the project-based work that jazzes people up,
Exactly.
right? And the question is the model just project-based work? But then my question is, what happens to the sort of ongoing stuff it is a slow grind and it needs somebody to attend to it. And if it's not this committee, then who is it? And so, but I honestly, the project-based work is what, gets me excited. Because it's sort of like, all right, we've got a focus, we've got a beginning, we've got an end. We figure out a timeline and we deliver, just like the ARPA committee, that was great. We were like in, we were out. And so that works for me, but I do worry about the ongoing stuff and like who's bird dogging it. And then the question to attach to that is, does it need a group that's meeting once a month? If there's people working on the priority projects, does there need to be a standalone group meeting once a month to do the ongoing stuff? And I don't have an answer to that because I don't know what that basket looks like.
I think
Yeah,
it really
that's-
depends on how much public input you want. Because you or other staff could hear from people and just make a decision on some of these things. On other things, you may want to hear from more of the public. So then the question is, what's the format for doing that? Is it just you guys having a meeting, or can we facilitate that?
Yeah.
And provide some recommendations? Because, and that's largely what we were doing for them. And that's when we got lots of people. And then the other thing is, what's the structure? Do you need to structure, for example, a group at Green Acres? We know the two people who came to us twice to talk about Green Acres. And maybe the most important thing is that we listen to them, we give the recommendation, and then you know who you need to contact for clarification. So it's, to me, it's really how much public do you want to hear from, and can we be helpful in hearing it and facilitating a recommendation?
I would agree. I think that the project work and the policy work probably do need to be separated. Just by virtue of how the board was originally set up, right, as a legislative advisory board. And so, project delivery not necessarily being their lane so much as it is mine, it might make sense to break that up and do, project-based boards or groups. So this is something that the commission and I have been chatting about and been talking about at the other boards that are potentially affected. So I don't know where the commission's going to go with it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's their decision because it's their advisory boards. So yeah, I do appreciate it. If you have any thoughts, after the meeting or in the next couple of days, I certainly welcome them.
I mean, ultimately, I think we all are like passionate about this area. We want to be helpful to you as the city manager and staff and the commission. And, obviously we're all happy to be here. Like most of us have been here most every meeting and, I've been doing it monthly for the last 4 years plus. And it's like, I think we're all here to help however is best suited to them. And because I do think fondly back to those first 2 years I was on the board, and then it just seemed like with COVID and just a bunch of other stuff, like they just stopped. And we have all sort of felt like, well, nobody wants us, or how can we be helpful? Because we've been having meetings that are a lot like this for a long time. Like we'll be wanting to do more, but not being asked to, or not sure how to do more. So yeah, I mean, I think every one of us here would love to do whatever is most helpful. And if it's project based, and that's the way that is in the lane of how it's written and what's most effective to make your jobs easier as staff, great, like. So I'm personally flexible, it doesn't impact me at all, I guess, in the next 3 months of my life, but, yeah, I think we're all just like here to help out.
And we've generally met 9 times a year, I think, because
Yeah,
we stopped meeting in July because and they were all based on, could we get a quorum? Because that's when everybody was taking their summer break. Then the day before Thanksgiving and usually Christmas week, so it's generally been 9 times a year, and we'd have special meetings if we had to
well,
make a recommendation for
the first year I was on the board, it was like 23 times that year, because we had
strategic plan, growth
growth
policy.
plan, comments and all sorts of stuff, so.
Yeah.
It definitely has ebbed and flowed, but.
It would be nice to know, like, the commission being, I mean, they're not paid to be full-time individuals. And so conceptually, it feels, what is the commission missing as far as resources and capacity? And what are the boards, how can the boards fill in some of that capacity? And ideally, that seems like that's how it should work. Is there, someone has a passion about parks, trails, public space, trees, and so maybe it's a public space committee.
And
You
quite
know.
honestly, that's one thing that I'm evaluating. I mean, do we need all of these different boards, or can they be kind of consolidated down to something like you talked about? And then, that was like my first thought.
Hmm.
But then you get to that point, and you're like, well, I don't know if we're just, kind of advising on operations and, kind of some high level policy, things like that. Does it even need to be a standing committee, or could the city just commit to having a couple of open houses and community conversations a year where, anybody can show up, whether or not they're, a board member or not, and there's not a quorum issue because maybe it's, me and the parks foreman and one or two others that are doing, those meetings, right? And that's the community directly talking to staff and directly saying to, the city arborist, this is what we think you should do. And,
Hmm.
I genuinely don't know the answer or have any, preconceived notion of what it is. I will say though, the comments that I heard from the commission, I mean, you'll notice we don't have many commissioner members that come to this board, and I'd say that's not unique either. And them being volunteers, I think they've got other things that they want to do a few nights a month. But they also, I will say, there have not in their mind or in their recent history been a lot of policy direction areas where they've really required input from some of the boards. And so, if you've got an advisory board that's there to advise on policy, but you don't have pressing policy issues in certain areas all the time.
Yeah.
Then what's the point, right?
Yeah, correct. And however this process lands, and like whatever structure, just as a reminder to think about, the leadership and executive team and commission and what it is now, is so much different than what it was. And I think that has a direct impact on how we organize ourselves. And so if we were in a different position where there was a less maybe active or engaged commission and executive leadership, and then there was no structure of boards to, in some essence, like a little bit of accountability to pay attention to parks and trails, I fear a little bit that that might be damaging to, I don't know, or maybe it's a lost opportunity.
No, I think actually, as I look back over history, that probably is one of the reasons this board came to be. And one of the reasons some of the other boards came to be, right, is because at a certain point, the commission said, well, we would like to directly hear from people on these issues because we're not getting the information or the results that we need from, the other branch of government. Right? So, yeah, and recognizing I'm just one person here at one point in time.
Well, I'm glad you're looking into a more effective, efficient, potential models to discuss with the commission. So, glad you're starting on the road.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And honestly, any thoughts that you folks have after tonight, please feel free to send them my way because it's it's kind of a bigger question than just this board, quite honestly. And it does impact a lot of volunteer hours across the city, so.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I appreciate that because we all do multiple things.
This is all I got.
It's like, three children. The conservation board is a policy board too, like us? or
No,
they're
so
different?
they're a little bit differently,
Yeah.
they're set up differently, they're actually an executive board.
Okay,
And so they were kind of created to work on some projects. And so, not to waste your folks' time talking about another board, but like, that's one of the issues there is that they actually were like a project-based board that isn't really accomplishing many projects, and it's kind of like falling into the policy realm of things, right? And so it's like the project-based board's doing policy, the policy boards are doing projects, and it's kind of hard to keep track, which, they were generally started for an energy action plan, right? And here we
Right.
are several years later, and we're nowhere closer on an energy action plan through that board, to the point where the city commission just said, you know what, we'll put the money in the budget and we'll hire a consultant because we actually do want an energy action plan to get done at a certain point, right? And so, we can fight quorums and board members, personal prerogatives and
Mhm.
priorities, or we can just go out and consult, hire and consult and do the work. So.
And when it comes to like parks and trails, what would you think of are some of the policy directions that would be expected from this committee? If we weren't doing any project stuff.
No, and thank you. There's, that's the $64,000 question, right? Is what is out there in policy land for parks? I mean, we could talk about, memorial bench policies, but we kind of already have one, and so. I genuinely, that's one thing that I struggle with is what policy to bring here.
Would it be things like recommendations on the new master plan, or is that too project oriented? Does it include things like we developed the policy for naming parks and trails at the request of the previous city manager? Is that considered a policy? Is signage and wayfare? I'm just trying to figure out what's really policy versus project. Is it when it's really broad, it's policy?
Yeah, and
Uh,
not so much broad, but I guess just kind of at a higher level that, like, yes, how to name parks.
Okay.
Or how would we go about citing benches, not necessarily, we got a request for a bench to come in from class of 79, where do we want that specific bench to go? But city staff, here is,
Yeah.
the community's thoughts on benches generally, when we should accept them, how we should accept them, and then, that, because in all honesty, that's one where if we had if we have a policy, then we as a staff just say, okay, well, we'll come up with the areas of need. And when somebody walks in the door with the bench, we'll show them the map and say, these are the areas.
and I
of
think
need.
at one point we actually suggested we would like to develop a policy for bench location.
Mhm.
Just like signage and
Mhm.
wayfinding and things like that.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to think of what falls in what area and what
Yeah,
falls.
but
in
even
what-
the bench one, it's like, well, that's pretty executive and pretty operational, right? And so, I come from a place that actually did have a memorial bench policy. But we didn't have a Parks and Trails committee, it's just staff came up with a policy, we presented it to the city commission, they adopted it and we moved on.
Mhm.
So, I guess there's just a lot of ways to.
Right, it
slice
just,
work.
again, comes down to how much public input do you want on some of these, or is it easier just to go ahead and develop it at the administrative? level?
Yeah.
You know,
And then get policy when it comes to the city commission or.
Right,
In an ideal world, I
Sure.
would say, we would do community outreach before we just whip together an executive policy, right? Just to
Mhm.
make sure that we were meeting that community need, so,
okay.
yeah. That was item G.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, to talk a little bit more to that, like the growth policy process, submitting comments from a Parks and Trails committee. That would definitely fall into, wouldn't it? That would fall into,
Oh, that's definitely
right,
policy
policy
driven,
development.
absolutely, yeah.
And then, what about, when, I guess when policies are being updated, plans are being updated, well.
Well, we're involved in the Trails and Active Transportation Plan.
Right,
We submitted 5 sets of comments on the growth policy, different iterations.
yeah,
And so,
Yeah.
using that, the parks or the trails and active transportation plan, I mean, that seems like very much kind of a project group where we could have said, okay.
Sure.
Just as Parks Master Plan coming up, and growth policy, I've been very appreciative of the diversity of comments.
Hmm.
But there is a statutory board, planning board, that all of that really could have worked through, right? And people that are interested in parks or interested in trees or interested in business development really, could have worked through the planning board to say, okay, you're in this section, this is my interest, these are my thoughts.
Well, that's sort of what we did, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
submitted everything to the planning.
They do, they go.
Yeah.
So as a sort of practical measure, we talked about, floating an ad to, get 3 new members. And it seems that action is potentially premature based on where the commission shakes out in terms of how they want these things to be configured and function. But if we don't do that, then, we're gonna start next year with shy 3 board members. So what's your recommendation on how those 2 things mesh?
I mean, my recommendation or my thought is that we put the ad out, collect applications, just to, have that opportunity. And I probably am going to bring this back to the commission at the mid-October meeting. Now that I've had the opportunity to go around and talk to the boards and kind of get their feedback. And we'll kind of plot a path forward from there in mid-October. And that path forward may be, status quo, fill the seats, keep doing what we're doing. Might be a revision to help boards operate.
But they won't make that decision mid-October. You're gonna lay it out for them.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of present, this is what we found, and then, kind of get their feedback on path forward, because, quite honestly, there's ordinances, for tree board, there's ordinances for this board was started by a resolution. So there are, just some machinations that have to occur to really affect whatever the outcome is.
And how will an active, not active, adopt a trail, that would be a program.
Mhm.
And so would city staff take on that program?
Yeah, we might, or that might be one like Sister City, right,
Mhm.
where we create kind of an adopt a trail committee, right, and they manage that program, or at least
Yeah.
help inform that program. Yeah. Like I said, there's still kind of some thinking to be done on this. We're kind of just stepping into the water on this one.
Yeah.
And the commission, just so you're aware, the commission chatted about this on September 5th at their meeting then, if you care to go back and kind of watch the video and their conversations. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Any other comments on that one? Big item G behind us. All right. Well, with that, let's go through all of the programmatic updates we have. All right, adopt trail update. Clay is not here.
There you go.
That's good.
B.
B.
I've got 5 logos. Possibilities, concepts that we will present to the city commission next week for their comments. The logos generally go one of 2 ways. There's kind of like the word mark. That's kind of like what Kalispell has, and there's with the name and then the mountains on top. And then there's the actual, kind of logo, somewhat similar to what we have currently. Maybe folks have seen Helena's that has kind of like the, circle tower and Helena, Montana, some dates. Those are pretty much the 2 ways that logos generally go, and we've got kind of a mix of those. We did a brief community survey to get some input on, features that people would like to see in the logo, whatever it is, word mark. So I will tell you, It's about 50-50, bless you. You know, about half the community prefers a word mark, about half the community prefers.
Did you get
know.
much response? I responded.
Yeah, no, we got over 500 responses to that.
Really?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
We didn't
logos
get quite as
inspired.
many as on the wellness center stuff, but it actually, you know, kind of competed with wellness center for response. So we
Wow.
asked, yeah,
Wow.
and if I'm recalling, you know, so we asked about, you know, kind of Mount Livingston / you know, Man in the Mountain, Yellowstone River, railroad generally, the Yellowstone, the bridge over the lagoon. Just these were features, you know, and then downtown, just kind of like buildingscape. I think those were the things that
Oh,
we
the
asked.
depot.
Oh, yes, the depot
Depot
building
building.
specifically was, yep, what we asked people to opine on, and really, it was interesting. Mountains and river were like, absolutely include those in, railroad. It was very polarizing, like the top answer was like, no, absolutely not, definitely don't include that, and then the second answer by like 5 votes was yes, absolutely include that. And then there was like a small spattering of all the other answers. So railroad is clearly very polarizing. Depot fit into that realm as well. And bridge over the Yellowstone was like, you know, kind of middle of the road, like, I neither prefer nor don't prefer getting that in there.
If you could restore those lights, then people might be more willing to have that be featured. There used to be little lamps on
Oh,
the
yeah.
bridge, yeah.
On the Lagoon Bridge.
Yeah, no, I've seen the pictures and where the lights used to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so you know, and then we asked about kind of colors, and blues and greens were more preferred. And I'm trying to think about, and then we asked some kind of open-ended questions that people gave us their thoughts on. So, we've kind of given all of that to the firm that we've been working with. They started out, they gave us 10 concepts, that, we gave them comments on, and so now we'll bring the 5, and we'll get kind of comments from the commission and the public. There will be another survey actually that'll go out probably tomorrow to ask kind of the community about those 5 options, so we can get a little bit of feedback for when we talk to the commission. So, yeah, and then we will, you know, if there's a clear winner out of it all, we will move forward with that one. But my hunch is we'll get down to, you know, the final 2 or 3, and then pick from there. So that will all be presented to the commission on Tuesday, and once we finalize the logo, then that work on the signage, and kind of wayfinding and like what that scheme looks like can really start to occur. Cool. And then we'll get out to, you know, where we place the signs and what they say and all that stuff. Yeah.
And you have all our information about where there are no signs.
Yeah, yes.
Very, very.
And our policy
Thoroughly.
recommendation is start with those.
Yes, I think that is where we will start, and then we will start replacing existing
Well,
stuff.
really what we wanted was consistency too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, everything but consistency, because the variety of signs is amazing.
There
Well,
sure
we had no
is.
budget. We were told we had no budget, so we couldn't replace any signs that existed.
And yet it's happening.
Yeah. Funny.
So anyways. Good, that's encouraging.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's.
I'll look forward to that
Actually,
next survey. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. I feel like that was like a year and change of like, we're gonna do this. And that's nice to see that there's actually logos being developed.
oh, yeah, no, and I just can't, I might be able to access them on this computer in some weird way. I thought about it.
And I do have a question. So like the recreation department has a different logo than the city. So will this apply? Will they still have their logo? Or what's your plan on that?
No, and that is the question. So what we have done in this project has pretty much gotten every department on board that, no, and Maggie admits that her logo appears to set her off as some different agency, and people don't even know that she works for the city by and large.
Oh.
And I don't think that that's maybe the best situation for her or for the department or for the city.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So no, what we have done, if in every design, I will say there is an opportunity, and this was in the scope of work, where if you've got kind of the base logo that maybe if it's a circular one that says Livingston has a picture and maybe Montana, maybe for the department's specifics, it will say Livingston on top, but then maybe Parks and Rec on the bottom or police on the bottom, right?
Gotcha,
So,
that's good.
you know, have
Yeah.
yes, consistency across departments, but allow for a little variation, so the public works people maybe can have a jacket or a hat that says Livingston Public Works with the logo. So,
Oh, good. And their own logo on their stationery or whatever they wanna do.
yeah.
People
and-
know who they're communicating.
Yep, exactly. And then, you know, even to the point where, you know, we've talked about the police badge, because that's, you know, a standard badge,
Oh.
just a circle, you know, we pop that circle out, and put the new logo in the circle,
Yeah.
right? And same with fire. And so that's, that is where we're going, because, yeah, brand confusion is not great. And if people think that our rec department is some sort of county department or standalone thing, then they're
Good.
probably not gonna call City Hall when they have questions, right?
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Reservoir Park next steps.
So we've chatted about this a few meetings back, but actually PCEC introduced the city to this group that does, you know, kind of some community outreach, and they've got a little bit of a new process that they have been working on. And so given how busy things were with Wellness Center and some other projects, we've let them know that we would probably contact them in November to pick up the work with them. And really the thought there is we've got some materials that have been donated to the city. And so we'd like to find out how to use those in a way that is suitable for the entire community, but then also for the folks that live in that area.
So is it a for-profit consulting group? Is that what it is?
It is, yeah.
Great. What's their name?
Can't think of it off the top of my head. I can send you the proposal. How about that, Tim?
Sure. Why not? Yeah. Good.
Yeah, no, it's actually, it's very, very exciting. The process that they have, we've quite honestly, we thought about using it for much larger initiatives like the Gateway Overlay Zone or some of these bigger things. And we recognize, you know what, let's start small with this process. And this actually seemed like a pretty darn good way to do it. And they're pretty excited about it as well. So. Yeah.
For the Land Water Conservation Fund
Mm,
pre-application, we have a draft
okay.
of that. And I think I just need to read through it as far as if that is something the city still wants to pursue as a potential funding source.
Yeah.
The pre-application is really short. And then I've just been adding the content, the committee had developed the public input and purpose and general scope.
No, that's great. We should set up a meeting in the next couple days. I think Monday is pretty free for me, if I'm not mistaken. This coming Monday, the 2nd.
And it is due on the 2nd, but I think I think I could knock it out.
Well,
But
I've got a bit of time on Friday as well. I don't know
Okay.
what your Friday looks like.
Yeah.
So,
I think I can.
okay,
Okay, great.
cool.
Yeah. I don't know how much we need. I think that'd be the biggest question of how much we can match.
Yes, exactly. And then I guess let me carry on to item D here.
Yeah, you
We
keep
are
rolling, man.
actively working on the scope of work for the Parks Master Plan. And I am hopeful that we will release that RFP, not hopeful, we will release that RFP in October and get that out. And then our hope was really to have the consultant on board by the end of the year, so we could work kind of through the winter with some meetings and all of that. and then have the Parks Master Plan developed hopefully by summertime, by the start of the fiscal year.
Possibly working projects in.
Exactly.
Do you normally just send those RFPs out broadly, or do you have like a targeted list of prospective consultants that you work with, that the cities work with before to send it out to, or both?
So yes, it is a little bit of both. We use an online platform called BidNet, and it's a nationwide platform. And so it works two ways. Vendors that sign up for BidNet sign up for different categories. And so as we post this one, we'll apply the proper categories, and it will be sent, notice will be sent directly to people that have, expressed interest in those. And then we also do maintain a list of certain vendors that we think would be interested in different projects. So we reach out to them just to make sure that they've actually seen it and are aware of it. So, great. And like the downtown master plan consultant project is a good example of that. The firm that was awarded actually was not one that we had specifically sent it to. They're one that just found it on BidNet and, applied.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Next one would be budget items related to PTC items. Jean, did you?
No,
It sounds mysterious. And we use items twice.
I know.
I know.
Double items and an unknown owner for this item.
I don't know, I didn't ask for this, but it could be just a question about what was finalized in the budget, because we looked at, remember, the long list of items that were related to Parks and Trails. But I'm not sure we know what was finalized.
So there's 30,000 for the master plan. And then there was 10,000 for some fencing upgrades in Miles Park related to the baseball fields, basically.
Saw that.
And then I believe there was there's a bunch for like different, a couple different mowers. That's not necessarily, but that's more operational. And then I believe there's another, gosh, I want to say 70,000, but it might be a full 100,000 for upgrades around the skate park area. And then I believe we have another 50,000 for kind of general park improvements, if I'm not mistaken. And so that was one that we were going to spend some time over the winter, kind of figuring out what we would do for the spring.
Is there anything for Green Acres?
A good portion of that actually is earmarked for Green Acres.
And was there
down there in the city.
play equipment at Sacagawea? Like swing set or?
I think there is, if I'm not mistaken. I have a list of what we thought is, and that's how we
Okay.
got to the dollar amounts.
Okay,
And I do know if their amount was for Green Acres.
and there were, let's see, repairs to the levee, that's done.
Yep, that is done.
And then what's going on with the lagoon? Isn't there still like 120,000 set aside for the lagoon?
So there is some money that was appropriated a few years back for the lagoon, but it was appropriated from the general fund, which is kind of it is a use it or lose it fund every
Oh,
year, right?
okay.
So it doesn't.
So it's not there, okay.
I can say with the lagoon, like I mentioned earlier, DEQ needs to do their every 5-year inspection this coming summer. And so,
Yeah.
yes, there will be some activity in the lagoon, I believe, in July and August of next year with DEQ.
Is all the money for the skate park coming from the general fund?
Yes, at this point.
That's painful.
So they never raised
No, it is.
down for the skate park.
Right on.
And please know, this is something that the finance director and I chat about a fair amount, because it's not just skate park that, it's like this, quite honestly, the memorial benches that we've talked about. I come from a place that actually does have a parks trust fund and different accounts, because, we would have people, we had an outdoor winter ice rink. So, there was one family that donated 2,000 a year to the Zamboni, right, to replacing the Zamboni. There was another family that gave, 5,000 a year for the tennis courts because they like tennis. And so, we would bank that money, and it was always attributable to certain projects or certain areas. And then when we, either got the money or the need arose, then we would replace the Zamboni or what have you. And so that's not something that really occurs here in the city of Livingston, but it is something that we may implement here in the coming little bit, because it's really pretty easy to do with our accounting system.
I can't think of others, I'm just trying to think of ones that we looked at.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the
Yeah.
other big things that we included, but really it was that 50,000 with a good portion, and then the skate park money as well.
Is there anything more happening at Mayor's Landing?
So, gosh, I've gotten a ton of feedback, and there's like 8 projects that I could think about running with at Mayor's Landing,
Oh, really?
but it's the Parks Master Plan really feels like an appropriate place.
Gotcha.
I mean, just for instance, where the boat ramp is, and there's the berm between the boat
Yeah.
ramp and the old roping arena.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of people say you should plow that berm out and actually use the roping arena for parking. So then the boat parking isn't happening all over the rest of
Yes,
Mayor's Landing
yes,
Park, right?
gotcha.
And people could actually use it. That's one. There's people that say maybe you could just bring a couple of truckloads of gravel down here and
Cover that
and,
glass.
no, they're not even talking about the glass on that one. They're just talking about rebuilding kind of the walking trail. There's another group that says we should bring in, a couple of feet of topsoil
Yeah.
and actually, cap the glass issue. And so, these are just 3 that I
Yeah,
whipped out here in the last 30 seconds. There's a heck of a lot more suggestions.
so wait for the master plan.
That's really, I guess, how, also because we didn't necessarily budget money for a few of those.
Yeah.
But the roping arena is relatively new city property, right? We
Yeah.
haven't had it for that long, and so, and then that gets into that whole area, adjacent to the Girl Scouts Park and that, our Girl Scouts property, and so, it does seem like some of that probably is worthy of public input rather than just, city manager says, do that.
We did provide a recommendation
Yes, I am aware of
What do
it.
you recommend for the roping arena?
that what generally people told us when we met there on site was they wanted to keep that wooded area. They didn't want it wiped out, or they wanted a shady place to take their dogs and to walk. They needed that water that was polluted with E. coli cleaned up, which I think generally it is. So they wanted to just be able to use it, and they liked it like it is, so.
Yeah, the parking thing, has come from not only the boating community, but also kind of the rodeo community, right? Because we actually.
Yeah.
Historically, we've given it to the Rodeo Association for a few days in July, but then another rodeo that operated in mid-August actually came and leased it from us for the weekend, and so. There probably is some merit to that. It does seem like it generally is used as a parking area, with the exception of, some dog walkers and some horses, which live in the trees probably.
In that
accommodates their
bar
need.
area, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So,
And the bicyclists, they wanted a bike track, but I think they've gone elsewhere.
No, it's like the idea of like a pump track.
Yeah.
And so that's still. They don't have a spot.
Yeah.
That's, I think people talk about that. I think 2014.
They tried a pump track up by the highway.
private
There's a
property.
trail. There's just a trail put in, there's no pump track, and so they first, I think. The history was trying to put it down on Bozeman Connector Trail, or trail we might adopt. And it got shut down because there was private playground equipment that they didn't want to lose.
They were also concerned about parking. That's right about when I came on.
Oh, okay,
They were concerned about parking.
Yeah.
So,
And we've had internally a lot of conversations about pump tracks and different places you could put them. So, yeah, that is one that is still actively being talked about.
oh, okay, that's good
Yeah.
to know.
And there is that, I'm sure you folks are aware of at the old airport property, there is now that mile long single track loop out that way, so.
1.2, and then there's another loop that's been added, another 0.8 out from Dog Lake.
Oh, they got more special,
Mhm.
so.
Cool.
And there's another portion of that property that's even much larger that, you know, the city and county have to figure out what we'll do with.
Yes, and there's a proposal from the motor vehicle. They want a big mud pit.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like to go mud.
On that portion, and it's with 3 options between Fairgrounds, Chicken Creek. And that other city county parcel, the city county parcel is the most likely. Because Fairgrounds is too small. Chicken Creek is leased to a long-term payer family. And then that only leaves the city county parcel.
The unfortunate reality about that parcel though is it is our permitted composting location. And so, and there's also private property access on the other side that needs to be maintained.
Sure.
And so we welcome the county commission when they come to talk to the city about how we're gonna jointly use the land that we jointly own, having that conversation. Because that composting facility, truly, it is already permitted.
Okay.
It's pretty important for us at the city. Not to mention probably some other wildland fire and other concerns that we have related to
Mhm.
that.
There's bird habitat and
I have chatted with the motor sports park people,
Yeah.
but the county hasn't reached out to the city to engage us and again, how we're gonna jointly use land.
and liability for something like that. Have you seen structures of where that liability works? Is it, oh boy, I mean, there's a multitude of structures, I suppose, but is it pretty complex or expensive?
No, you know, cities have and government agencies have access and use agreements with private entities all the time. You know, the soccer field actually is a pretty good example, right? LYSA for the most part operates that facility
Okay,
that is publicly owned. So it's that part. You know, insurance doesn't scare me as much as it does some other people.
Yeah.
I grew up in the insurance capital of the world, so that's that.
Matt Pritting.
Yep.
There's a couple of boxes in City Hall and we've been handing them out and trying to send them out to some of the old places that have used them in the past. So,
Can I pick up a bunch?
yeah.
I got a call from
grab
the
it.
folks at, next to the Chico, they want some, and I always get calls from Dan Bailey's. So,
I've got boxes of 1,000, several boxes of 1,000.
how do you
Yeah.
like them?
They came out great, actually. Yeah, they look fantastic.
Do we have any at any sign locations?
You mean kiosks?
Yeah,
Well, they're
Trying to
at
remember.
Myers Riverview Trail and Bozeman Connector Trail. But as we pointed out to Grant, it's just the map itself, which is, it's lost in these big kiosk things. So I don't know if you were ever able to print larger ones. Because that's what we had mentioned, that if we had a larger one to put up there, it would actually fill up the space and be easier to read.
oh, yeah,
And actually, I chatted with the Parks Department about doing that, so I do need to follow up to see if.
But I think those are the only 2 kiosks. I can't
is
remember.
Mayor's and Bozeman back here?
Yeah,
Mayor's
there's-
Landing doesn't have them.
There's another one out on O Street Connector that we saw when we had that opening ceremony a few
That's what I
weeks
mean, yeah,
back.
Myers Riverview, sorry.
Yeah, Myers and Bozeman Connector are the only 2 I can think of.
Okay.
Those are the only ones.
I don't know if we have other kiosks anywhere that could take them.
It'd be good to put more up if there was
Right.
that opportunity,
Yeah, I'll follow up with Parks
yeah.
after this meeting.
So I'll come by tomorrow and pick some up and get them out to Chico.
Perfect.
Since
yeah,
we-
he distributed a ton of them just through, I mean, just like along the river, you know. By the dog poop bags or something, you know.
Yeah, we take some.
I'm sorry?
We would take some, I mean,
Okay.
or, I mean, I was gonna call them Timber Dales, but Timber Trails, Dan
Dan
Bailey's.
Bailey's. Well, and the
Please,
hospital was a big user of them and.
I
so-
did take some out to some of the hotel owners actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And the Murray always took the lunch.
Oh, yes, you mentioned that.
So it's all combined there. Okay, thank you.
All right, final item up there in Parks requesting.
Yeah, I just don't know if there, last I heard, the transportation people were taking a look at that and they had included like 5 potential crossings that they were gonna analyze. And I was curious about status.
Yeah, so MDT is working on that. They have identified issues with a couple of the locations that they're working through now, trying to solve. And so they're also working through their systems impact group to actually do some of the engineering. So it does look like the one at Main Street actually seems like it's maybe a little bit more doable than some other locations. And then they were also looking, I believe, at both Third and Yellowstone to get something between Main and the Fifth Street crossing light. Because we've got a light at 7 where US 10 comes in, and that's a protected crossing. We've got something at Fifth that's a protected crossing, and we've got something at B that's a protected crossing. So Main is a natural one because it's where the pedestrians coming up from under the tracks
Mhm.
end up right there. And so then we also asked them to look at both Third and Yellowstone, recognizing that it's a few blocks either way from either Main or, if you're at Third or Fourth to Main or to Fifth. And so we're probably going to have some people that make some poor decisions and try to cross rather than walk the 2 blocks in either direction or 1 block either way, right? So cutting down that distance. And then the other area that looks most promising as well is out by Town and Country. And whether that comes out on Geyser or a different area. MDT is looking at a number of locations there, and quite honestly, the issue there is that on the west side of 89, there's really no landing infrastructure. And so MDT won't really put in a lighted crossing unless there's a landing for somebody to end up at. And so they think they could do something at Geyser more likely than the other. I think is it 13th that comes out like a little bit below Geyser there.
I think so.
Yeah, and so anyway, it sounds like Geyser might be the one that it comes in at.
And so they'll obviously come up with a list of recommendations in terms of, highest priority locations, but will this hoop that we're jumping through right now result in funding from MDT to help do these things, or is it a match, or like, what's that?
So that's, yes, we are working towards a point where they will fund it, because based on the data that we had before, it was not a fundable project for them. And so whether it goes through TA or it's something that, we just push them on doing through their normal operational budget is kind of to be determined. If it goes through TA, there is a 13.5% match. If it goes through their operational, then we may just have to do some landing improvements and electrical hookups.
And Bennett, is that just a bigger project priority?
Yes,
It's a big mess.
yeah, yeah, Bennett is a little bit more difficult for them because of the actual rail crossing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is, I will say, so the city put in for a grant in February with the US DOT that was not awarded for the alternatives analysis for the crossing. And we got actually great feedback on that. Our application scored pretty highly. And so, I've talked to the reviewers and know kind of what tweaks we need to make to get it up to the secretary's office for approval.
Oh, good.
So we are going to go again for that right after the new year. There's the opportunity opens up in November, and I think it's due in January is what they're thinking. So we will go for that again. And
This is the feasibility analysis.
so yes, it's an alternatives analysis that will look at the entire rail corridor within city limits.
right,
And
the
then
whole thing.
identified not only improvements that would make existing crossings better and or into quiet zones, but then also to identify a preferred location for an additional grade separated crossing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty big one, and I genuinely, after talking to DOT and others, I feel pretty confident that we can be in a good position to win this thing next time around.
That's
Oh,
cool,
good.
yeah. That's great.
I mean, we lost out like stupid points, quality of life. Somehow that was the thing, the area that we scored the lowest on. Like, really, the rail crossing quality of life is in question here. And I told the reviewer, I said, it's funny because, and then we talked like when the railroad was shut down, for the bridges issue. And then I said, wow, that's funny that's where we scored the lowest. Because trains haven't run through town for the last month, and all anyone has told me is how awesome this is, and that we need it to be like this forever. And the guy laughed and he said, well, just put those anecdotes in the application next time. I'm sure you'll get the full points for it. So, I need to go back and look at that specific section and how we whiffed on that one a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
hard.
obvious.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones, excuse me, that's like maybe a little bit hard to quantify.
Yeah.
And so we went maybe a little bit less qualitative on that one than we probably could have when the guy said, really, you get a couple of anecdotes. And the other one we lost out on is, I welcome everybody's input on this, not to drag this meeting out, but the other area that we scored low on was partnerships. And we had letters of recommendation from every member of the delegation, from the county, from a number of nonprofits, from Bike Coalition, from like everywhere. And so I kind of challenged the gentleman that I was talking to and said, well, we pretty much got everybody that we thought, in the whole county is anywhere tangentially related to public infrastructure, pedestrians, bikes, the environment, all those other things. Like, what else were you thinking about? We're kind of southwestern Montana, in the middle of nowhere here. And he said, yeah, no, you got all the basic ones and you checked all the boxes, but there was nothing really innovative there. To which I again was like, so maybe you could give me some examples.
I'd say major, the major employers, I mean, they're the only constituencies that you didn't hit, and so.
Like hospital or school?
Yeah, like the hospitals and the schools and PFL and.
Or HRDC, working with low income crossing tracks,
We had ones
We had
from,
one, yeah.
it really, I kind of jokingly said like, well, I guess Yellowstone's 60 miles away. I could have called the superintendent and gotten a recommendation from him. That would have been unique perhaps. And he kinda-
Innovative, so just based on the letters of support
that was the partnerships one.
or
So
partnerships.
we
but
didn't
it was
have
only-
innovative partnerships. Like he was like, sometimes in New York City, they've got like a this, that, or, it's like.
For
yes.
7,000.
We should get Don Mayer to someone.
For
That's
8,000 people, the fact that we
Led
have.
Zeppelin,
living
let's get
space
Led Zeppelin to send a
And
letter.
active transportation coalition and like all those things is innovative,
Wow.
so.
Yeah, that one, I really couldn't figure out what the heck else they were expecting on that one, so.
Especially during a feasibility study. It's not like you're implementing a project in usability and participation
Mhm.
and using something.
Hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah, so that one I don't know. I welcome anybody's input on how to raise the score,
I mean, really, like I said, I think the only major ones that you missed were large employers. Yeah, Kate Ellison.
HRTC?
Yeah.
How about the soccer moms, having to go
Homeschoolers?
up to the soccer?
Oh, no, we had a lot of, letters of support from entities on the north side of the tracks and people on the north side. I just,
I don't know what they want.
so, well, we'll dig it out and do better next time.
Backcountry person,
Call the superintendent.
equestrian,
Yes, I won't make that mistake again.
that's funny.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's it.
6 o'clock next time, right?
You got it.
I'm sorry.
We'll change the time.
Yeah.
What's our next meeting, dates?
October.
This date would be October.
It's.
25th.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
it's not too soon to note that we probably, I mean, are we the day before Thanksgiving again?
I just checked, yes,
So we should cancel that.
just cancel November's meeting.
Yes.
And plan December's on like, second.
Because we have to send a recommendation to the city commission in
Yeah.
December, so
Yeah,
we'll have to
so
reschedule December again.
I'd say we take December's and we move it, the first or the second. But we can talk about that.
Yeah.
When we have. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Alrighty, I guess, we have any questions to adjourn.
So
Second.
Great. Congratulations, 7:59. Finish
Good job,
job,
everybody.
guys.